everybody, my name is Code Blue and welcome back to another Code Blue tutorial. Now, oh my gosh, has it been a long time. I do apologize to everybody because of it, but I've recently been quite busy, and in the times where I haven't been busy, I've had no motivation to do anything. So again, a huge apology to everybody who has been waiting for the next video. I'm not going to promise that it won't happen again, but I will promise that I will try to make sure it doesn't happen again. So yeah, in this video, basically, this is going to be the last video dedicated to the zombie spawn. Of course, it's not going to be the end of it. Like I said, just the last video dedicated. So in the previous video, if I remember, we set up all of the zombie spawn and stuff. If you haven't seen the previous video or the one before that, go back and watch it. But basically, all it does is it spawns a certain amount of zombies spread between a certain interval, of course, and then it waits a few seconds, which I believe is 15 seconds, and then it starts to respawn all of the zombies, except the next time it spawns more with more health. So I hope that makes sense. Now in this video, the problem with this is if I go ahead and I start it, I will show you what the problem with this is. Don't worry about that Lua error, by the way. That's one of my scripts, not the game mode, so it's okay. So if we start the game, as you know, they all spawn there. But if I go ahead and I move away, okay, so only 3 spawned the first time. I completely forgot about that. So let's just quickly get rid of these. There we go. Now we got to wait 15 seconds, and we will get some more spawn. Okay, so there's 1. I want to try and move away here. 2, 3, 4, and there you go. So now, as you can see, the problem with this is zombies are spawning inside of each other, okay? And of course, on your map, you don't want all of the zombies to spawn in the same place. I mean, what's the fun in that? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to this spawn pause, okay? And instead of it being just a vector, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to make it a table. So if you don't know what a table is, I recommend you go back and watch my tables video. But yeah, and then all we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste this a bunch of times. It doesn't matter. Oh, that's nice. It doesn't matter how many of these you have. Of course, the more, the better. Basically, what this is just going to do is it's just going to make it so that we can select from a selection of spawns where the zombie is going to spawn. So here's a little tip. If you go somewhere on the map and you do get pause in the console, so thanks to Crazy Gamer for pointing that out. As you can see, we then get a 3 values there, which is our position in the world. So if we do this and we simply put a comma, the decimal points don't matter. You can leave them there if you want, or you can remove them. That's entirely up to you. Leaving them there just makes it a bit more precise. That's about it. But then all we'll do is we'll fill all of these in. Yeah, so now I already recorded this video once and I messed up a little. So I have my table here. And this is a list of all of the positions that I put. Now, again, remember, it doesn't matter how many of these you have, but the more you have, the better. So now, if we go ahead and were to try and run this code now, it would break because our zombie spawn is trying to set the position of the spawn zombie at spawn pause. Now, of course, we can't do this because spawn pause is now a table and not a single vector. But what we can do is reference a value like that. But we're going to do math.random, of course, to give it a random spawn. And we're going to do a random number between 1 and then table.count spawn pause. So now what table.count does is it returns the number of elements in the table. So we do spawn pause. Spawn pause will have, is it 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So it's going to have 10. It's going to return 10. So it's going to generate a random number, between 1 and 10. And then that is the one that it's going to select. So basically, it's going to choose a random one of these to spawn the zombie at. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say zombie count is, I'm going to set it straight up to 15. And I set the interval to 1. So this is only for testing. Now, if I go ahead and type reload in console, remember reload, just restart your single player game. Now, if I click start game, as you can see, a lot of zombies will spawn and they will spawn fast. And as you can see, they are indeed spawning in different places around the map. So I don't know whether you can see that, but there are zombies around the map, which is great. But of course, we still have the problem sometimes of zombies spawning on top of each other or inside of each other. Now, basically, you can end this video here if you want. If you want to leave with this zombie spawning system, that's fine. Or there's an optional part that we're going to do next. And what the optional part does is it basically makes it so that the zombies spawn evenly distributed around the map. So there's never one particular spawn that is cluttered with zombies. They get spread around, and hopefully things like this won't happen. Because of course you don't want that. But as I've already said, you can leave the zombie spawn system as it currently is, and that won't be a problem. Or we can move on to the next one. So if you want to continue, then feel free to watch the video. If you don't, then thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to create a function here, and we're going to call it get best spawn, okay? Now, this function is basically, we're going to use it to return the best spawn position that a zombie can do. So we're going to make a variable called best spawn, okay? We'll just set this equal to a vector of 0, 0, 0. That vector will, of course, be changed soon. But that's going to basically store our best spawn until we return it. Then the closest distance. This is basically going to be the one that's closest to our zombie spawn. Wait, what am I on about? The closest distance is going to be basically used to find out the closest distance a zombie is to that particular spawn. And then we're going to select the spawn that has the least amount of zombies near it, if that makes sense. So we're going to do a 4kv in pairs. And we're going to loop over spawn pos, which is the list of our spawns, if you remember. Now, what we're going to do here is for each spawn, we're going to need to find... Did I spell that right? I think so. Basically, we're going to need to find the closest zombie to that spawn. So we're going to set this to 1 million. This is basically our radius that we're going to be searching in. So we're going to search in a radius of 1 million, which should be, whoops, sorry about that, which should be big enough to cover all of the zombies that would ever exist on our map. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do for A, B in pairs. Now the reason why we do A, B is because, of course, we already have a KV up here, and we're inside that, so we have to name them differently. You can name them whatever you want. It doesn't matter, as long as they're unique. Then what we're going to do is we're going to loop over and stop find by class NPC underscore zombie, okay? Now, NPC underscore zombie is basically the zombie that we're spawning on the map, and stop find by class will return a table of all of those zombies on the map. So we're going to loop over, of course, all of them. So we're going to do this for each spawn. And when we loop over them, what we're basically going to do is we're going to be, and this will be a bit confusing. And again, I just want to point out one more time, if you're struggling with this or you don't understand this, don't worry about doing it. You can just continue on to the next video. But we'll do if B, which is our zombie, because AB, get pos, which returns the position of that particular zombie, and we call distance on it. Now, what distance does is in the parameters, you specify a vector, and it will give you a whole number of the distance between the 2 points. So we're going to check the distance between get pos and V. Now, remember, V is our current spawn pos. So if that distance is less than the closest zombie spawn distance, then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say that the closest zombie distance is equal to, and then this distance here, okay? Now, before I continue, I want to explain this a little bit more. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to loop through all of the entities, the zombie entities that are on the map. Then what we're going to do is we're going to check its position relative to the current spawn pos that we're looping over. If it's less than the closest zombie distance, which starts at 1 million, then it's going to go ahead and update the closest zombie distance to be that variable. That distance between the both. That's going to loop through every zombie, and eventually the zombie with the lowest distance would have been logged into the closest zombie distance. So closest zombie distance at the end of that for loop will contain the distance between the spawn and the closest zombie. Now, if that doesn't make sense, look through the code again, try playing around with it, changing some things, seeing if it makes sense. But we're going to move on to the next part now. So after that's done, we've got the closest zombie to the spawn. Now, what we're going to check is if the closest zombie distance is greater than the closest distance, which is this variable up here outside of the for loop. Remember that. Then, if it is greater than that, what we're going to do is we're going to say that the closest distance is equal to 0. Is equal to this, sorry. And then once we've done that, we're going to say that the best spawn is equal to v. So now this outer for loop basically does exactly what this for loop here does. This for loop then loops over all of the entities, remember the zombie entities, finds the closest one, stores it inside this variable. This one then compares that variable to this variable up here, closest distance. If it's greater than that variable, which means that that zombie is further away than anyone that we've logged before, we set best spawn to v. Now, the second time we loop over, the next spawn, the closest zombie may be even further away, which means that the closest zombie distance is going to be greater than the closest distance, which means that we found an even better spawn. And this is going to loop over until eventually it finds the best spawn. So once all of this is done, then at the end here, we're going to want to go ahead and we're going to want to return the best spawn location, okay? Now, I know this is going to be so confusing to some of you. And like I said, if you really try to understand it, but if you really can't, then again, this code is not necessary. You can still continue the game mode without it. It just adds a better spawning system. Now, one last thing that we got to do is, of course, if there is no zombies on the map and we're trying to get the best spawn position, we're going to encounter an error because, you know, there's no zombies and we're trying to find the closest zombie. So what we'll do is just before we do that, we'll do if table.count and start find by class npc underscore zombie. So what that's going to do is it's going to get all the zombies, it's going to count them in the table, and if that's equal to 0, then we know that there is no zombies on the map. So what we're just then going to return is, if you remember our code down here, which just selects a random spawn, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're just going to return a random spawn rather than a specific spawn, because of course we can't compare zombies. And for those of you who don't know, when we call return, that's going to go ahead and end the execution of this function. So none of this code will run if this return gets called, which will only get called if there's no zombies. Now, the last thing we need to do to finish this up is we need to go down into our, where is it? Here it is. And when we set the position, we're going to set the position, and instead we're going to call the get best spawn function. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're then going to go in game. I'm going to type reload, and hopefully everything works okay. So here we go. We're going to start the game. And as you can see, they seem to be spawning evenly around the map. As you can see, there's no two that's actually stacked on top of each other yet. So I'm not saying that... Oh. Okay, well, I think we just found a problem in our code. So let's do some bug fixing. So it seems to work for the majority of them. But every now and again, I believe... why all the way out here, though? Oh, wait, is it doing it up here? Okay, so it looks like I maybe... Actually, no, it can't be. That's actually really strange. Why is it doing that? Let's go ahead and see if we can figure this out. Okay, so I figured out the error. What the problem was is I had added this spawn here, this one in particular, and the problem with this spawn is that it was above the water up here for some reason. No idea why I added this. I must have done it by mistake. But then when the zombie was spawning, it was falling straight down to the floor. So when it looked for the next best spawn, of course, this spawn had no zombies near it because they were all down there on the floor. So it then kept spawning them until they stacked. So all I did was simply remove that spawn. And now what we should see is a much more evenly distributed zombie system. So if I click start spawn, okay, so we still got one over here, which was quite strange because I did just remove that spawn. I am a bit confused. Did I make a mistake? Okay, so I didn't save the file. That was my bad. I'll go ahead and type reload. So now let's start the game. And as you can see, the zombies are being evenly distributed around the map. So now, of course, once it is evenly distributed and there is no spawns, they are still going to stack on top of each other. Like that's something that is really hard and difficult to stop. The best way to prevent that is by adding as many spawns as possible, or by making them in a small radius so that as soon as they spawn, they run towards the player. But for now, this is actually a much better spawn system, believe it or not. You got to bear in mind that we are currently spawning 15 zombies in a few seconds. So, of course, they're all going to stack near each other because none of them are going to leave their spawns before the next zombie spawns. And we're spawning 15 zombies, which is quite a lot of zombies to spawn with this few spawns. Now, I hope that made sense to some of you. If it didn't, don't worry. It was a pretty advanced thing compared to most of the stuff we've done. But nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed it. Now, before the video ends, I want to give a huge shout out to Infinity Null. This guy is a great guy who donated to me last night with a generous amount. And I just want to give a huge thank you to you, man. Like, the donations help out a lot, and I really do appreciate it. And if anybody else wants to donate, feel free. I appreciate it. But again, donations are not required. I will do my channel regardless. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.